George Harrison saw his ex-wife wed his best buddy in 1979. The most romantic love tale in music history, according to some. However, the events that followed were far from romantic. Pattie Boyd was terrified for 8 years. She tried to conceive for thousands of dollars as he secretly fathered children with other women. The world was stunned when he made an on-camera admission in 1999. Pattie disclosed the worst marriage at the age of 80. Her response will also surprise you. Pattie Boyd was born in Taunton, Somerset, on March 17, 1944. For 9 months, Diana, her mother, believed she was expecting a boy called Michael. Not even a girl's name crossed anyone's mind. Diana first met her father, Colin Boyd, also known as Jock, in early 1942. He was 23 years old. She was only 17. The difference in age influenced their relationship from the beginning. The family continued to move after the birth of Pattie. They traveled to Scotland's West Loy in 1946. They relocated once more to Guildford, Surrey in 1947. Her father was constantly moving while serving in the RAF. That gave the impression that everything was shaky. But 1952 was the most shocking. The age of Pattie was 8. During her half-term holiday from boarding school in Nakuru, she discovered that her parents had quietly separated. She was not informed. She was left to work things out on her own after they just parted ways. The family that Pattie was with resided in Kenya from 1948 to 1953. During these years, the Mau Mau rebellion took place. More than 11,000 people lost their lives. Britain tried to put an end to the uprising by spending $55 million. Everywhere you looked, there was violence. The entire Kikuyu territory became a tightly policed area. Pattie was there in the heart of it when she was at school in Nakuru. When British forces launched Operation Anvil in 1954, thousands of people were detained and arrested. It was always a fear. Pattie never saw the man her mother drove up to her school with one day. "This is your new father," she addressed them. Following the divorce, Pattie was transferred to a strict Catholic convent school. His name was Bobby Gamer Jones. That's how she learned her mother had remarried. It didn't feel real. The country was at war. Her parents were gone. And now, this stranger was supposed to replace her dad. Initially, St. Michael's and St. Agnes in East Grinstead, followed by St. Martha's in Hadleywood. What she desired to be was never questioned by the nuns. The girls were simply instructed to locate a husband. Subsequently, Pattie stated, "They just wanted us to meet someone and get married. I never wanted to get married." Pattie read Vogue covertly as the nuns preached obedience and silence. Rules were irrelevant to her. She was interested in fashion. At Nakuru at her convent school. The only connection to another world she had was those glossy pages. One where clothes, confidence, and attractiveness were truly important. Only 3 O-levels had been earned by her by 1961. It wasn't because she wasn't intelligent, though. She was simply never given a chance by the system. She was 15 when she returned to England in 1959. Her new home is Wimbledon. She lived in London by 1962 and worked as a shampoo girl at Elizabeth Arden's Bond Street salon. She made about $3 a week at the age of 17. She washed the hair of wealthy ladies who spent a fortune on hair care procedures that Pattie could never afford. Then one day she was seen by an enigmatic client. The woman, who claimed to be employed by Honey magazine, advised Pattie to pursue modeling. Pattie was initially unsure. She showed up despite not wanting to lose her job. Everything changed with that one meeting. She was photographed for magazines after washing her hair. Her visage would be on the covers of Vogue in a matter of months. Pattie was once reprimanded by Elizabeth Arden herself for wearing black eyeliner, which is odd. According to her, that's not the Elizabeth Arden look, but that eyeliner, that rebellious little touch, became the look of the entire decade. By 1962, domestic conditions had deteriorated. Her new stepfather, Bobby Gamer Jones, had to close his business. The family was impoverished. Pattie had to fend for herself. Gamer Jones was more than simply a failed businessman, though. He was harsh. He kept yelling. He would occasionally beat the kids. He made her brother, sister, and Pattie frightened. Not even Diana, their mother, could stop it. Her fear was too great. So Pattie went out. She had to have money. Freedom was what she needed. London was a flurry of fashion, art, and music. With the appropriate appearance, anyone may become a star, even those with no money. Pattie immediately entered that world. She was married to George Harrison by 1964. She had to construct everything from the ground up first, though. When she was just 17, she was caught shampooing hair in 1962. Her modeling career for Honey magazine began that same year. She barely made enough money to get by on her first paychecks. She signed a contract with Cherry Marshall's agency by 1963. Officially, she measured 57, 35, 23 to 35. She had light hair and blue eyes. Initially, she worked on catalog shootings, which involved 5 to 8 hours per session. She took on low-budget, inexperienced photographers who needed practice. As Pattie needed pictures, it worked out. She didn't stop. Her name began to circulate gradually. It all changed. One of the most well-known photographers in Britain, David Bailey, worked with her on a test shot in 1964. Her silky bangs and large eyes were visible in the pictures. Her characteristic was that naive, dreamy appearance. Bailey's print even called Beatles' wife, George Harrison, before to their marriage. Mary Quant was saying at the time that ladies should aim to look like Pattie Boyd instead of old-fashioned celebrities like Marlene Dietrich. She appeared in A Hard Day's Night in a minor capacity that same year. She appeared everywhere at once. In 1964, she also modeled Mary Quant's innovative miniskirts for Woman's Mirror. These colorful skirts were 8 inches above the knee. Some referred to them as vulgar. Quant didn't give a shit. Taste is death. Vulgarity is life, she said. Pattie modeled the look perfectly. Mini skirts, long straight hair, colorful tights, and a wide-eyed stare. The British female look was born, and Pattie was the face of it. Later that year, she signed with L'Oreal for their international ads. She was just 20 and earning $50 to $100 per ad. That was huge money. She also starred in TV commercials for Dopey shampoo. Her hair became so famous that she started writing a beauty column in 16 magazine telling girls how to lighten their hair and get her look. But as her career soared, so did her relationship with George Harrison. The media attention became overwhelming. Beatles fans hated her. George asked her to stop modeling. He said it was for privacy. That was the beginning of the end of her independence. Still, 1965 was massive. She made $20 to $30 a day when most people earned $15 a week. She appeared on 3 British Vogue covers in 1969 alone. She was in Elle, Vanity Fair, and Honey. Editors said she had the most graceful body they'd seen. Photographers like Terence Donovan and Brian Duffy wanted to work with her nonstop. Everyone did. In April 1966, she walked in Ossie Clark's show in Mayfair. She wore the famous hoopla dress made of cut circles. It cost $25 when most dresses were under $10. Clark even named some of his clothes after her. That same show included black models walking alongside white ones, something no one had done before in British fashion. Pattie was part of that history. Her modeling fee that day was $50, equal to around $800 today. In 1967, Norman Parkinson shot her for Vogue. The shoot celebrated India's influence on Western fashion. Parkinson was paid $200 and Pattie got $75. Those photos later sold at auction in 2024 for up to $3,000. The shoot happened just as the Beatles were diving into Indian spirituality. Pattie followed George into that world, too. The style, the vibe, the music, it was all connected. By 1968, Pattie was making $100 a day. She was among the highest paid models in Britain. She had heavy makeup, bold eyeliner, and bags full of wigs, jewelry, and shoes. Sometimes she even used paint as makeup. During one shoot in Paris with David Bailey, she wore all yellow clothes and makeup. That year she opened a boutique called Jennifer Juniper with her sister Jenny. It was named after a Donovan song. They sold art and antiques. Pattie handled the buying and still modeled on the side. In 1969, she landed her biggest deal yet, a $5,000 Revlon campaign that ran in over 50 magazines across the world. It was seen by 25 million women. She became the face of Revlon's Ultra collection. Her eye makeup was so iconic, it started trends in America. Pale pink lips, bold eyes, dramatic shadows. Revlon's sales jumped 15% that year. Pattie Boyd wasn't just a model anymore. She was a global beauty icon. On the morning of March 2, 1964, Pattie Boyd stepped onto a train at Paddington Station in London at exactly 8:00 T. She thought it was just another modeling job. They gave her a schoolgirl uniform, gray dress, white shirt, striped tie, white socks pulled high. The train began moving. Cameras started rolling. That was the day her entire life changed because George Harrison was on that train, too. George noticed her right away. She was only 19. He said her eyes were like velvet, her hair dark chestnut. While they were filming, George leaned in and said, "Will you marry me?" He then added, "Well, if you won't marry me, will you have dinner with me tonight?" Pattie chuckled. She said, no, she had a boyfriend, a photographer named Eric Swain. But her friends told her she was insane. 10 days later, she saw George again at Twickenham Studios. That night, she ended things with Eric, and she said yes to dinner. 2 years later, on January 21, 1966, she married George Harrison. But Pattie's story didn't start with the Beatles. In November 1963, she had already filmed her first acting job. It was a commercial for Smith's Crisps, directed by a young man named Ridley Scott. Nobody knew who he was back then. He would go on to direct Alien and Blade Runner. Pattie played a party girl in a short dress. She said she was painfully shy and hated speaking on camera, but that commercial marked her move from modeling to acting, and it gave her confidence just in time for the film that would make her famous. In 1965, she appeared briefly in The Knack and How to Get It. The movie won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It was directed by Richard Lester, the same man who made A Hard Day's Night. Pattie had a short scene listed only as Girl Perfuming Ankle. The scene was quick, but even years later, Beatles fans still debate whether it really featured her. The film captured the wild spirit of London in the 60s. Fashion, music, freedom. It was all changing. Pattie was right in the middle of it. Then came Tonight, Let's All Make Love in London in 1967. It wasn't a normal film. It was part documentary, part art piece. There were scenes like music movements. Pattie was married to George by then, and the whole city was exploding with color, noise, and rebellion. The film showed underground clubs, street fashion, protests, and interviews with famous faces. It was wild and unfiltered. George would later visit San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury that same year and be shocked. He called it dirty and fake. But in 1967, London still felt like the center of the world, and Pattie was one of its brightest lights. By 1968, Pattie was stepping back from modeling. She ran a boutique in Chelsea with her sister called Jennifer Juniper. She wrote a fashion column for 16 magazine, giving advice to American girls on how to look like the Beatles. She told them what to wear, how to style their hair, what trends were hot on Carnaby Street. That same year, she appeared in the documentary All My Loving, where she talked about how music and fashion were mixing into one. Her marriage to George didn't just change her life, it changed the entire fashion world. After they married in 1966, designer Mary Quant said women should want to look like Pattie Boyd, not Marlene Dietrich. Pattie was on covers of Vogue, Vanity Fair, and Tatler. She worked with photographers like David Bailey and Patrick Litchfield. Even Twiggy copied her look. Long straight hair, mini skirts, wide eyes. That was Pattie. In February 1968, she followed George and the Beatles to Rishikesh, India. While the world waited outside, Pattie had her camera inside. The Maharishi didn't let press in, but Pattie was family. She captured private photos. John, Paul, George, Ringo, all meditating, laughing, writing songs. She took 16 photos. 12 were never seen until 2018. They became her first serious photography portfolio. Christie's would later auction them in 2024. Then came something George told her simply, "I wrote it for you." The song was released in 1969 on Abbey Road. It became his biggest hit, topping charts and getting over 150 cover versions. Frank Sinatra called it the greatest love song ever. But in 1996, George changed his story. He said everyone just assumed it was about Pattie, but he never said that. That same year, Pattie modeled for Italian Vogue in Milan with Twiggy. She kept working with top photographers, but she also started to step back. In 1970, she launched her column Pattie's Letter from London. She gave American teens a window into British trends. She also learned photography from professionals and joined the Royal Photographic Society. She stopped regular modeling because Beatles fans harassed her in public, but she kept doing selective work. In 1971, she held her first private photography exhibition. The photos weren't just art. They were memories. The Beatles, the Stones, rock stars, and unguarded moments. She had lived the life they all wanted to see. But things were changing. George had become distant, obsessed with spirituality. He didn't want her modeling, but she wanted her own identity. So, in May 1971, she went back to modeling anyway. Ossie Clark named dresses after her. She wasn't just someone's muse anymore. She was an artist. But behind the cameras, everything was falling apart. In October 1970, Eric Clapton sent her a letter. He didn't sign it. He just wrote, "Dearest Lel," using the name Isla. He asked if she still loved George. He begged her to write back, but said not to call. Pattie thought it was a fan letter and showed it to George. That night, Clapton called and asked if she got his letter. That's when she realized it was him. Clapton's obsession had grown dark. In 1970, he started dating Pattie's sister, Paula. He moved her into his mansion, got her hooked on heroin. Paula overdosed. George even suggested a double date with Clapton and Paula, thinking they could swap partners. Clapton couldn't go through with it. Paula became collateral damage. In 1972, George discovered the truth about Layla. It led to a silent explosion. He called Clapton to Friar Park. They didn't fight with fists. They played guitars. John Hurt, the actor, was there. He said the air felt like electricity. It was a musical battle between men who didn't know how to express their pain with words. By 1973, Pattie gave in. She had an affair with Clapton. It wasn't random. George had cheated, too. With Mean, Ringo's wife, and with Chrissy, Ronnie Wood's wife. Pattie knew everything. When George said he needed concubines like Krishna, she realized he saw her as a block, not a partner. So she made her move while he was off with Chrissy. On July 4, 1974, George told Clapton, "You can have her just like that." He'd been cheating for years with Charlotte Martin, Chris O'Dell, and countless groupies. He even kicked Pattie out so he could have Charlotte over, then phoned her saying the girl was gone and she could come home. Their marriage was officially over in 1977. Pattie married Clapton in 1979. Pattie had started taking pictures in the 1960s. She saved modeling money to buy her first camera. During fashion shoots, she asked photographers to teach her. Her camera became her escape when the Beatles' fame made her life feel small. She captured everything. George Clapton, MC Jagger, Jerry Hall, Ronnie Wood. Pattie Boyd married Eric Clapton on March 27, 1979 in Tucson, Arizona. George Harrison was there, too. They had once been best friends, and now George was watching his ex-wife marry the man who had chased her for years. People thought it was romantic, like something out of a love song. But behind closed doors, everything fell apart almost right away. Eric was drinking heavily. He would come home drunk and start yelling. Some nights, he smashed guitars and furniture just because he felt jealous or angry. Pattie later said that she would pray he'd pass out before hurting her. One night, he kicked her across the room. She had bruises. And it didn't just happen once. These outbursts became part of her life for 8 years. While all of this was happening, Pattie was trying hard to get pregnant. She went through multiple IVF treatments. It was painful and expensive. She wanted to start a family with him. But what she didn't know was that in January 1985, Eric had a baby with someone else, a woman named Yvonne Kelly, who worked as a studio manager. He named the girl Ruth. Pattie had no idea. She was still injecting herself with hormones, going to clinics, doing everything she could, and Eric was off with someone else, having a baby in secret. He even made jokes about her not being able to conceive. Pattie didn't learn about Ruth until 1988 when Eric showed up one day and told her the press was going to reveal everything. When she asked him if there were more children, he didn't say no. That was the moment she realized she had no idea who he really was. Then came something even more painful. In 1985, while Pattie was still trying to become a mother, Eric started an affair with an Italian model named Lori Delanto. A year later, on August 21, 1986, they had a son named Connor. Eric told Pattie about the pregnancy and said maybe they could all work something out that broke her. She had spent years and thousands of pounds trying to give him a child. And now he wanted her to accept his mistress and their baby. She described that moment as a stab in the heart. Connor died on March 20, 1991. He was just 4.5 years old. He fell from a window on the 53rd floor of a New York building. Eric later wrote Tears in Heaven for him. But for Pattie, it was something else. It was a reminder of the life she could never have with him. In 1999, Eric gave an interview that shocked everyone. He said that during their marriage, he had forced Pattie to have sex with him. He called it just taking what was mine. He admitted it. He said he believed he had the right to her body no matter what she wanted. He also said people were scared of him and walked on eggshells around him. Pattie was trapped. He made her feel like she was nothing. She said she felt erased, like she didn't exist. And still, no legal action was taken. No consequences. Pattie finally left him in 1987 and filed for divorce in April. The legal documents mentioned adultery and unreasonable behavior, but that was only a small part of it. In truth, it was about physical abuse, rape, betrayal, and years of emotional damage. The divorce became public in 1989. The truth started to come out. People learned that he had fathered 2 children while married to her. And worst of all, he admitted later that he hadn't really loved her. He just wanted to take her away from George Harrison like a trophy. In 2007, Pattie released her book called Wonderful Tonight. It became a bestseller. She told the world everything. She wrote about the violence, the addiction, and the fear. She told how Eric threatened to overdose if she didn't leave George for him. She told how she would hide or pray when he was drunk. The book made headlines. People finally saw the truth behind the songs and the fame. After the divorce, Pattie went back to something she had loved all along, photography. In 1990, she started showing her work in galleries. She had been taking pictures for years, but never showed them. Her work included photos of the Beatles in India in 1968, George Harrison during quiet moments, and even Eric Clapton during his early career. One show called Through the Eye of a Muse opened in 2006 and drew huge crowds. Her photos sold for as much as $5,000 each. In 2005, she launched a traveling show called My Life in Pictures. It toured Europe and the US with more than 300 rare photos. Some showed George writing something. Others captured Eric working on Layla. One section focused on the Beatles' 1968 spiritual trip to India. Fans lined up. The show brought in over $500,000. Each print could sell $4,300 airs. But behind the success, there was still pain. Between 1979 and 1988, Pattie spent more than $30,000 on fertility treatments. And while she was doing that, Eric was fathering kids with other women. When she found out about Ruth in 1991, it was like losing something all over again. He told her the night before the papers did. No apology, just facts. She felt like she had lost parts of herself after each failed treatment, and he had never supported her through any of it. In 2012, she added new chapters to her memoir. She described the therapy she went through. She said she spent over $20,000 on therapy between 2008 and 2012. It included trauma counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, and support groups. She admitted that during her marriage to Eric, she had started drinking and taking tranquilizers just to cope. Her private diaries from 1987 to 1989 showed how close she came to a breakdown. She wrote that she had become a shadow. She finally realized that both George and Eric had traits that made love impossible. They were selfish. They didn't see her as a person, only as someone to chase or control. After everything, she still found peace. On April 29, 2015, she married Rod Weston. He was a property developer. They had known each other since the 1980s and had been dating since 1994. She was 71 and he was 61. They got married in a small ceremony at the Chelsea Old Town Hall in London. Pattie wore a silver dress with a big hat. Rod wore a matching suit and silver tie. He had been her quiet support for years. She called him kind, comfortable, and strong. They settled into a calm life in West Sussex, far away from the noise of her past. In 2022, Pattie released another book, My Life in Pictures. It had 300 pages and included her photographs, stories, and personal artifacts. She went on a signing tour. She talked about her life as an artist, not just as someone's muse. The book had diary entries, Beatles photos, and even the original Layla album cover. She told the world that her story was her own now. In March 2024, her personal collection went to auction at Christie's. It sold for around $2.8282 million or $3.6 million. That was more than 7 times what people expected. The collection had over 100 items, including love letters, handwritten lyrics, and old photos. One of George's love letters from 1971 sold for up to $15,000. A set of lyrics from 1982 went for $50,000. The Layla album artwork was estimated between $40,000 and $60,000. Pattie said she didn't want to keep opening old boxes anymore. She was ready to let go and use the money to help women's charities. In 2024, at age 80, Pattie said something no one expected. She said George Harrison was her true love. Even after the divorce, they stayed friends. He visited her before he died in 2001. They still talked. She said, "If you love somebody, you do that." She admitted that Clapton had hurt her in every way, but George always showed her love, even at the end.